3, 2, 1. Welcome to the rematch of the Hisense U7QG, otherwise known as U7QG, otherwise known as the 2025 Hisense U7 versus the TCL QM7K Rematch Round 2. And to make sure we're on a level playing field, we're going to put them up against our good buddy, the Sony BVM3110. Welcome everyone. Making sure you can all hear me. Hey everyone. Hey all, drummer, nice to see you in this live stream. And of course, Keith and Getty and Willy Woo, tongue twister there. Jimmy C, thank you for coming. Jay, hey, good to see you. All right, so we are having a rematch today because I realized that the TCL and the Hisense requires a lot of TLC out of the box. Out of the box, they're now optimized to perform adequately. Once optimized, they not only match their bigger brother, the QM8K on the TCL and the U8Q, but sometimes maybe even outperforming them. And believe me, I've also kind of played with the QM8 and the U8, and when all the TVs are really optimized for their settings, the U7 and the QM7K just overperform for their price. So this is why the love is for these two mid-tier TVs. For a few $100s less, they are just killing it. And I'm going to share the settings with you. So out of the box, it'll be completely different. I'm not going to reset the settings out of the box because then I have to go over the settings and retune them. Now they're not calibrated, right? None of these TVs are calibrated. All of my adjustments are purely on the TV settings that you can do at home because I've matched it to the reference monitor to the degree that I can. Obviously, with a meter, it would be perfect, but without a meter, this is really close. So I'm going to jump in and share the settings with you for the TCL QM7K on the left and the U7QG Hisense on the right, and the center is indeed calibrated. That is the Sony BVM3110. Okay. We're going to get started soon, but oh, thank you, Getty, for confirming. Great audio. All right, so let's really quick go through the settings. Where's my remote? The most important part of this stream is my remote. Did I misplace it already? Oh, here it is. Okay, so we'll start with the TCL. If you have the TCL QM7K, go ahead and try these settings. It'll be closer to reference. Doesn't mean you'll like it. See, that's key. We all see colors differently and we all notice different things. This is just what I found to be most similar to the reference monitor, and more importantly, it's for my viewing environment. This is a dark room, light control, right? All the great stuff that we talk about that creators like to have, the creator's intent. So I'm matching it to the reference monitor, which is used or to be used in this kind of dark environment. But if you have a bright environment, these settings may not be good for you, but it is great for me to normalize these settings so that we can make it an apples to apples comparison with the best settings available. Okay, so TCL and Hisense are both in filmmaker mode. Brightness is at 100. So normally 100 is the reference brightness for HDR. Now some TVs push it a bit hard at 100 and you might have to lower the brightness, and that would be the U8 sometimes. But in this case, both the U7QG and the TCL QM7K at 100, that's fine. So brightness, any adjustments, that's all default. Gamma, 2.2 is out of the box, and I'm going to keep it at 2.2 for now because I find that the color accuracy is best at 2.2, but you might want it to be a bit more contrast, a bit deeper blacks at 2.6. And so this is the issue with the TCL. The color changes depending on your gamma, right? So what you're going to see is 2.2 because I think the color best matches the reference at 2.2, but in some cases where we're testing for shadow detail, we're going to have to go to 2.6 to get you that deep, dark shadow detail. So here we're at 2.2, and detail priority, that's also default. I'm going to keep it at that. I find that to be most accurate. Dynamic contrast is off. Local contrast is high. That's the local dimming. Keep it on high. Peak luminance highlight is on high for HDR. For SDR, you could play with that. In a bright room, definitely high. In a dark room, if you want reference, then you can keep that off. But if I turn it off for HDR, look how terrible it looks, right? Way too dim. So you need the highlight, peak luminance on max. Okay, is it going any higher? high dynamic, there we go. But high dynamic is a bit too bright sometimes, so I'll keep it on highlight. But if I need that peak brightness to go a little higher, there's always that, but it feels like I've reached its maximum headroom at highlight anyway. So that is the TCL QM7K. Now for the Hisense. Also, there was a bit of tuning here to make sure it was a good match to the reference monitor. Picture is, of course, filmmaker mode. Brightness, local dimming and peak brightness also on high. Doesn't go any higher than that. Brightness is 100. Contrast at 50. Black level, I took it down to -3. At 0, I felt the blacks were too lifted, so we'll have it at -3 for now. If we see any black crushing, then we'll bring it back to 0. But I think -3 is the most accurate to match the reference monitor. Dark detail is off. Now, you would use dark detail if you want more shadow detail. So in some scenes, let's say Game of Thrones, and you can't see the detail, turning it on kind of lifts the blacks a little bit. I normally keep it off, right? And here the gamma cannot be adjusted. So it locks you into the gamma, whatever this is, in HDR on the Hisense in filmmaker mode. AI contrast, for me, it's a mixed bag. It does bring some of the shadow a little darker, so you might play with that to touch your subjective taste, but I keep it off because I think that's most accurate. Now, dynamic tone mapping, I'm keeping on. It comes out of the box off. I don't know why. It should be on, because if you turn it off, sometimes it feels a bit too dark. So we're going to keep it on for now, but if it feels too bright, we could always turn it off. But yeah, I'm going to keep it on because I think that's the way to go. Color temperature is warm 1. Oh yeah, I should show you the color temperature of the TCL as well, because I believe I also changed the color temperature to match. Yep, it's at 3. So on the TCL, color temperature is at 3. On the Hisense, it's at warm 1 and hue 0, but color's at 50. That's important because out of the box, I think it was at 60 or something like that. And all right, I think we're good to go. And so far, in these very bright, punchy images, it feels like both TVs are very similar to the reference monitor. So with those minor adjustments, I'm pretty impressed. Let me raise the brightness just a touch. I mean, look at that. Very good. Oh, and of course, content by Jennifer Gala. Thank you, Jennifer. This is the content we'll be looking at. So both the HDR Super Channel and Jennifer Gala's own named channel is what we'll be using to test a lot of this HDR, especially when it comes to maximum brightness, right? So let me see. $1,000 nits should not be a problem. What I like is at the beginning, where she had some pretty bright stuff right here. So this is 2,000 nits, so just pause right here. And this is why I stopped at 2,000 nits. There is no content online. I know those of you who are regulars, you know what I'm going to say. There's nothing online streaming, Netflix, Prime Video, doesn't matter what you're watching, Apple TV, nothing exceeds 2,000 nits. So when we have content that is 2,000 nits, like here, and I'll show you, my reference monitor will indicate that. Let me turn up the exposure so you guys can see. Right, so we have the waveform here, and the waveform is indicating that, yes, there are some elements that hit 2,000 nits. Most of the scene is around 1,500 nits, and the peak specular highlight, which is the eye of that bumblebee or bee, honeybee, that eye reflection is 2,000 nits. And let me see if these TVs can hit that relative to the reference monitor. We know the reference monitor's got it. The question is whether the TVs have it. And yep, it feels like the TV's hit similar brightness as the reference monitor. So, well, actually, the reference monitor is a touch brighter, right? So maybe on that window, the reference monitor is just a touch brighter. But the TVs themselves are quite the match because look at the tone mapping of everything else, right? Very impressive. Now, I think if I go back 10 seconds, it'll be at 4,000 nits, and this pushes the entire scene a bit brighter. There we go. 4,000 nits. And if you look at the waveform, right? Let me see if you can see the waveform. Yeah. So you see how it's significantly higher right here? So now we're at closer to 4,000 nits. The average picture level is above 2,000, close to 3,000, and little highlights are at 4,000 nits. Now these TVs on paper are not supposed to hit 4,000 nits. So if I lower the exposure, you'll be able to see for yourself that the reference monitor is indeed a touch brighter. But it's not that much brighter. So the difference between what the reference monitor can hit and what the TVs can hit, if you need that level of brightness and you find 4,000 nit content somewhere where the average picture level is close to 2,000 nits and your peak specular highlights is 4,000, you'd have to get the QM8K or the U8Q maybe. Not even the Bravia 9 will hit this level of brightness where the entire scene is bright. So look at that BVM again, right? The entire TV is a little bit brighter, and then the specular highlights go even brighter. So we see the limits of the mid-tier TV. But when I say limits, again, where are you going to push these limits other than Jennifer Gala's content? So Jennifer Gala's content is demo material to show off your, I don't know, 116-inch UX that can hit 8,000 nits. That one, I cannot wait to bring a reference monitor to see. But imagine how funny that would look. We get 116-inch and a tiny reference monitor. It already looks ridiculous with the 65-inch TVs. I can't imagine how it would look next to a 116-inch. And so now we see the limits. 2,000 nits, very close to reference. But at 4,000 nits, they fall behind, right? And you know it's not really dimming right now because it's not an OLED. But yeah, so I had to show you that to demonstrate that if you really want to push it, you can't push it really beyond 2,000 nits peak specular highlights when the rest of the scene is like, let's say 1,000, 1,200. The peak is 2,000. These TVs can come very close to that. But when your peak is 4,000 and the rest of the scene is like 1,800 nits, these TVs can't do it. But again, you will never see that other than maybe alpha, which I cannot wait to try out later. But right now we're going to look at these two TVs against each other. The U7QG, U7QG, same thing, and the QM7K. So far, they looked pretty good. Let's look at some of these faces where it's easier for you guys to see white point on a face. I love how Jennifer combines a face with white colors so that you can see the differences. And I'm telling you, this looks very good. Very good. So we're at 1,000 nits, very easily within the domain of both TVs, right? Yeah, 4,000 nits is a bit brighter than the TVs can handle. But I just wanted you guys to see how, with the settings I shared with you, how accurate these TVs can get against a reference monitor. I am very impressed, very impressed. And then we'll see actual real skin tones with real content. We'll do some Netflix. And this is a bonus. I connected both TVs to my digital antenna so you guys can test the differences in terms of antenna watching. We'll do that at the very end because I know that's a limited number of people who really still use free antenna. But you know, you guys will get to see that as well. And I'll have to be judicious with kind of making sure I jump from channel to channel quickly enough. So, because I can't pause, right? This is a live TV, folks. This is like old school. But yes, all right, let's see what questions you got here. Hey, Getty, thanks for joining in with a super chat, my friend. Blooming and raised blacks between these two. You know what? Good question. Let's go back to that super bright honeybee again, because I believe, oh, actually, let's go with the tiger. I just saw a tiger right there. The tiger is going to get pretty bright, and that will give us a chance. Oh, let's look at this sharp color real quick. So this is some of the new stuff that we haven't seen yet, but oh, there we go. That's a good one. Let's stop right there. Let's see, how bright does this one get? So this is a pretty bright scene. The entire face of this beast, lion, white lion, goes above close to 2000 nits, right? So the brightest part of the scene right here is around close to 2000 nits. The rest of the lion's face is around 1500 nits. So this is a good test of blooming because you will never see anything this bright on real content anyway. So if it looks good in this content, you're pretty much safe. And it looks good to me right now, just perceptually. But let's see if we lower or increase exposure, what that does. So far, so good. And at this exposure, if there's any blooming at all, you're not going to notice it. But I'm going to increase it some more. Let's push it a bit harder. All right, let's see. I don't know. This is excellent. Excellent. Let me turn up the exposure one more touch. All right. Okay. You can't do better than this, guys. It's a literal match for the reference monitor in terms of the black. The black is as black as the reference monitor, just above the lion's nose. And then you look at the black, that's the eyes. Look how deeply black the eyes are, despite the bright fur around the eyes. Thank you so much, Jennifer, for making this scene right here, because this scene is so brilliant. You're seeing deep black levels that are the ears, the eyes, and then the background in front of its face. That's black. The reference monitor shows it's black, and the TV's a near match. Mid-tier, my friends, both TVs are $799. I would not have expected this from a TV 4 years ago. You would have gotten a Q90R or a QN95A or whatever, and it still would not have performed this well, nor would it have gotten as bright. But today, not $2,000, which is what the Q90A or the Q95B would have cost, but at $800, you're getting this level of blooming control. I'm very impressed. So bravo to TCL and Hisense. So good question. Great question, Getty. Now, obviously, Starfield would have been more challenging, but I think this gives you a better reflection of what you're going to see in real content. But at some point, I'm sure we're going to get a little bit of that Starfield. I'll find it. But definitely impressive. Impressive. And, oh, look at that. Right, so this is what you can normally see, right? I've turned the exposure back to normal, and wow, really, really good. Look at the contrast. Now, this is kind of easy because it's kind of contrasty, but look at this for, let me turn down the exposure just a touch. I think it's a bit too bright there. Great skin tones. No, she's not the skin tone example. That would have been too easy. Let's use this dude. He's got some good rich colors in his skin right there. Right, some reflections, and it's still a little bit bright. Okay. Yes, it does feel like the QM7K may have a touch of yellow, and you could tune that down. And this is where kind of like tuning by eye is so difficult until you see the scene. So the best I can do is maybe take it down one notch to 2, and that does make it slightly better. If I go to 1, it's too cool. See that? So I'm just going to keep it at, you know, okay, maybe I'll keep it at 2. Because I think I had it at 2 yesterday, but there were some scenes where I felt 3 was better, but we'll keep it at 2. Now, you could play with tint, but that really messes things up. So let's just keep it at 2, because anything further, you're really going to have to go into white balance and do a true calibration. But this is why the U7QG was my choice the last time around. It really is a good match with a BVM out of the box with minor adjustments that you saw. The QM7K, the minor adjustments, still there's something that is just off just a touch with color accuracy, just off just a touch. Now maybe the gamma may have made a difference, because we know that gamma kind of changed the color a touch. Right? So I was at 2.2. Maybe 2.6 brings some of that back. Yeah, 2.6 is a little bit better, right? Do you agree? We'll leave it at 2.6, because I don't know. This is one of the difficulties of tuning. And this is one of the difficulties of the TCL as well. Even calibration on TCL is difficult. And yeah, the TCL does look a bit warm, so we took that down to 2. I don't want to take it down any further. I think it would be a bit too cool. And now, we have a reference monitor. It makes it easy. But this is where the U7QG edges the QM7K. It's closer to reference out of the box with that minor adjustments that I made. QM7K would require a bit more dive into the white point with the actual meter to make it truly reflect what you're seeing. But it's not bad. I have to say, this is a lot closer than before. And Getty, thanks for the reminder. Only 135, wait, only 135. 135 in chat and only 35 likes. Hey guys, if you're enjoying this, don't forget to click like so others can enjoy this stream. Yes. All right. What happened to the QM8K versus U8QG shootout you announced a few days ago? And that will be coming, but I'll tell you this, Ken, and all of you probably know this by now. For the U7QG to beat the U8QG, it takes the U8QG out of the running. And the QM8K is so close to the QM7K, it doesn't make sense to have the QM8K go against the U8QG. And we already know what's going to happen. The U8QG has too much teal, and it's not brighter than the U7QG, and rarely does its peak specular highlights beat the U7QG. So among all 4 TVs, QM7K, QM8K, U8QG, and the U7QG, the U7QG, also otherwise known as U7.5QG, I believe really beats its price. It's priced the same as the QM7K, but it outperforms the U8QG in color accuracy, and it almost matches the reference monitor more often than not. And the QM8K is just barely better than QM7K. But I know for sure the QM8K will destroy the U8QG, because if the U7QG can do it, then the QM8K, slightly here and there better than QM7K, will definitely kill it. And well, that's why I don't want to kick a dead horse, Ken. I really don't. I mean, if you watch the last stream, the U8QG did not make as good of a showing as the U7QG. So it's one of those rare moments where its younger, lesser brother stands up and shows off. So that's kind of what happens, right? Is when I see a TV really not making a case for its price, I think that stream did enough for me to say, hey, you know what? Let's not kick a dead horse while it's down. And that's it. That's why. But if you guys really want to, I can. It's just, what's the point? All right. I like 1000 nits. I do too. Because 1000 nits is what maximum brightness for most TVs. And both of these TVs can easily do 1000 nits. No problem at all. All right. So while we're here, let's go into net. I think, I want to see if there's anything else. Oh yeah, Starfield. Starfield's real quick because y'all love that. I'm looking for a good Starfield for you guys. Okay. That doesn't sound like a Starfield. All right, close enough. Okay, so here we have an almost Starfield. Let's turn up the exposure. Close my curtains a bit. Get some stray light out of the way. Oh, and this is where the U7QG really stands out. So as you can see, its black levels are a touch deeper than the QM7K, but its stars and moons are as bright as, and well, we'll know it's bright. I'm going to turn on the exposure so you guys can see how bright it gets. But at this high exposure, already we can tell the U7QG, amazing black levels, right? Now, obviously, the reference monitor has the best black levels, but right behind it is the U7, and then behind the U7 is the QM7K. So let's check for brightness by turning on exposure. And see, so the QM7K is slightly brighter, and maybe that's why it's slightly more blooming, right? So here you have the trade-off where the Hisense, and let me tell you how bright that moon is here. That brightest moon right here is supposed to be 240 nits, 250 nits, right? No more than 300 nits, right? So the brightest moon is no more than 300 nits right there. And it feels like, and so obviously all the TVs can handle 300 nits. So the question is TCL over brightening it just a touch? And by doing that, what does it do? It kind of raised its own blacks. It kind of gives you that impact, but defeats itself. By doing that, it kind of raised the blacks as well. Whereas the Hisense is not overdoing it. It's keeping the reference brightness, but also that keeps the black levels lower. So it turns out that it worked out well for a Hisense. But perceptually looking at it, what's interesting is uniformly, the TCL is uniformly gray across. Whereas on the Hisense, it feels more like there's clouding. So it doesn't mean it's a win. Actually, you know what? Let me show you guys that. So this is, let's look at this again. I'm going to max out. Okay, so I'm maxing out that exposure. And what you're seeing is the QM7K is uniformly lifted. This ends up being less distracting. On the U7QG, the deepest blacks are deeper, but it's not uniform. So, this is the trade-off. The BVM is telling you everything should be black. There should be no splotchiness. So you have your choice, right? How do you want your poison to be? Do you want black levels here and there on the U7QG, but then it looks a little splotchier if you do that? Or on the QM7K, you're like, you know what? We can't get everything deep black like an OLED, but we can raise all the black so it's uniform. There's no right answer, just giving it out there for you guys. I think it's less distracting the QM7K's approach, but it does clearly show that it's lifted. But then the U7QG, you get bits of lifted clouding here and there. So I find the QM7K's approach actually less distracting. So again, it's all taste. There's no right answer. They have to choose their poison. But this is a good Starfield test though. And taking it down, it feels like there are a bit more stars on the TCL as well, right? Because it's a little bit brighter. So interesting, this is where you have to take your software tuning and you have to ask yourself, what do you want to do? If we bring out all the stars, it's going to uniformly lift everything, but maybe that's okay. But then, I don't know. I'm not here to tune the TVs for them, but it's something that I know they have to discuss among themselves all the time. So. And you notice vignetting, do you? All right, all right. So I think we're good with Jennifer's content now. I don't think there's anything else we could do there. So let's go to Netflix real quick. We're going to do a little bit of, and I'm going to turn off the waveform because we don't need that. As we know, well, actually, I'll leave it on to make a point so you guys can see how bright these things really get. Yeah, there you go. That's a good one. Okay. So this scene is not even 100 nits. It's like 90 nits, right? So the brightest part of this scene is 90 nits at most, not even 100 nits. And this is HDR. Oops, a bit too bright. My exposure's all over the place. There we go. Okay, better. Yeah, so that's about 90 nits. This is a bit brighter, and this one is... So here, we're at 500 nits. So the sky that you see right here, 500 nits. And it's fairly bright. It feels pretty bright. Ooh, yeah. Well, definitely the TCL is brighter than the U7Q. And I think the TCL is over brightened right there, because the reference is not that bright. So if you're concerned about matching reference, the U7QG more closely matches it. It follows the EOTF curve more linearly. QM7K feels like it's over brightening here and there. But where it's important is the skin tones. I think the skin tones, once adjusted, it's fine. So here's another skin tone look, real quick. There we go. Right? They look pretty good. The white point in the clouds, very similar to the BVM. The facial expressions, or rather the one behind and her. Let's go to the next one. This is a great one because he's so pale. Yeah, it feels like the TCL is just a little bit brighter than it needs to be. Just a little. I wouldn't return it because of that, but I'm just making the point that if you want the TCL to look more like a reference, you really need a calibration for it. Okay, let's see if you have any questions here. And the QM7, that's a good point, Robert. The QM7 looks like the brown dirt more closely matches reference. And you could be right. I mean, this is why, if you get it calibrated, you know for sure this is the best it could be. But right now, it's just out of the box. This is the best it could be out of the box, right? And I think we're going to have some SDR, because a lot of you watch SDR and you don't even realize it, right? So, but let's look at the brown of the door, because I think this is a good brown door scene. Those of you who enjoy doors like I do. Yeah, it feels like there's a bit of red, right? A bit too much red. And, well, actually, I'll tell you why there's a bit too much red. It's the oversaturation at 2.6 we talked about on the TCL. So if I take it down to 2.2, doesn't that brown door look more like maybe even 2.4? But now it's too bright, right? So if I turn up the exposure so you can see what the BVM looks like. It's more brown than red. But on kind of both TVs, there's maybe a little bit too much red. So it's not perfect. Definitely a little calibration will give you more perfection. Okay, let's see what we got here. And Jimmy still got his Panasonic 65-inch from 2016. It is still beautiful. Hey, Jimmy, did you get it calibrated? Because that would be amazing if you did, and it's still rocking, right? But see, so this is a great point, Robert. When a facial skin tone is off, you can tell right away. Ah, he looks sickly, whatever. But when a door is off, you can't tell. I guess it's a door. Because what is a door supposed to look like? Is it, wow, is that a walnut, which has more brown? Or is that cherry, which has a bit more red, right? Or you know, is that ebony? So yeah, other than arborists out there who could probably tell. But then what kind of stain are you using, right? So yeah, but facial, you can tell when something is off. So speaking of faces, we're gonna go into SDR real quick. And I've already retuned it for SDR, so it looks, actually, you know what, since we're here, let's do extraction shadow detail. All right, there you go. All right, so let me take off this waveform. We don't need it. All right. Let's turn up the exposure. And it feels like there's a bit too much red, just a touch, on the TCL. And that's why in these darker scenes, you take it up and that kind of red mostly is alleviated, but now it's too bright, right? So this is something that I think TCL should be able to fix in the off season. I call it the off season, or what else to call it. But between now and the next firmware update, this is something they could look at. So I'm going to put it back to 2.4 because I think that's the most pleasant. Now I could go to 2.6, but my camera actually is overemphasizing the red because it's overexposing everything. And at the higher exposures, higher ISOs, the camera itself also does a color shift, unfortunately. So there's no winning. Okay. But look at the color detail. It's all there. It looks great. I think they've solved color detail. They just need to solve for color at the lower luminances. All right, now we'll do SDR. I like to use Asian faces because there's such subtlety in colors. And is it me? Why does it feel like the Hisense is a little bit over brightened somehow? Maybe because I have the tone mapping on? Oh, wait, no, it's SDR. There is no tone mapping. All right, let's see what we have to do with the Hisense here. Filmmaker, brightness. Black level is at -3. Everything else is off. Contrast is at 30. Brightness is at 20. Is it too bright? Nope. I think the brightness is correct. Yeah, increasing contrast definitely doesn't help. I think 30 is still the best. Black level, -3. Oh, keep it -3. Oh, I can play with the gamma. So gamma 2.4 maybe? It's just slightly off. Turn down the camera exposure. Or maybe it's the TCL is a touch too dark. Oh, you know what? I think they're close enough. I'm not going to beat myself up on this. Okay, so this is the scene, right? It's the peak brightness setting on the Hisense. You think so? Did I set it, is the peak brightness too high? Could be. I didn't even notice that. Peak brightness high, medium, low. Yeah, maybe so, right? Thank you. Excellent. So on low, now maybe it's not dark, not bright enough. Let me increase the brightness just a touch. Actually, let's turn off peak brightness altogether and increase brightness. There we go. Okay, much better. All right. Thank you, CB. And their peak luminance is off on the TCL. So there you go. Yeah, SDR, I rarely, if you guys can't tell, I rarely watch SDR. Or rather, I rarely tune SDR. And so when I tune it, I forget, oh, peak brightness should be off. Okay. Let me turn up the exposure a bit so you can see the skin tones maybe a little bit better. So it feels to me we have this slight, it's just slight, the TCL has a slight yellow. Now, my camera makes it look more yellow than it is, but I can see just a touch of it, whereas the Hisense has a touch more magenta. So at this point, only a calibration will get it perfect to the reference monitor, but they're very close, right? Each TV going a little bit in a little bit different directions. Let me see. It could be my white balance. Okay, let's see. All right. They're very close. Like this one, it's very close. I think that both TVs did a great job here. Both TVs did a really good job here. Now, if you look at the door though, so the faces look good, but the TCL door looks more like a reference door, right? Whereas there's a bit richer color in the U7Q's door. So if you're looking at the door, TCL nails it, but the faces are right there for both of them. So there you have it. U7Q, QM7K, trading blows. Trading blows, and it's hard to say I like one better than the other, because then in some scenes, the QM7K is like, no, 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 look what I can do. But we're talking very close here. And this is so great, so great. I've never thought that I would compare mid-tier TVs, not the best from TCL and Hisense. This is how far they've come. So this is so amazing. Which TV has better black levels? We're going to look at Jennifer Gala's content for that, but if you go back to the lion scene, they were identical. And when you look at the black levels in the Starfield, it was a decision of creativity. The QM7K purposely lifted the blacks a touch to make it more uniform, but then it was able to get the stars brighter. So in a Starfield, that actually has good impact, right? Each star is bright and it's uniformly slightly lifted. On the U7, the black levels were blacker, but then it had more glow around the stars, and the stars weren't even brighter because it was so focused on getting the black levels accurate, it ended up lifting and glowing where the stars were, even though the stars weren't as bright as the QM7K. So, yes, the U7Q had deeper blacks, but maybe it was to its detriment that it did so. So to answer that question, which is a better black level, doesn't tell the whole story. And this is why we have real scenes. So you guys can see for yourself, just looking at a spec sheet on paper, oh, 5,000 nits, oh, perfect blacks, means nothing. You put in a real scene and you go, oh wait, yeah, it has deeper blacks, but it's kind of splotchy. Where it isn't splotchy, you got the deep blacks, but then around the deep black, it's splotchy. And that's kind of distracting, right? So single measurements do not tell the whole story. And this is why we need to do scenes, real scenes, Netflix and TV shows and whatnot, right? So speaking of, let's get to black levels or shadow detail. So I like to use the term shadow detail because it tells you what's in the shadows. And we will look at Kaleidoscape shadow detail next. Let's check it out. But in the meantime, ask your questions if I can find my phone, because only my phone can control the shadow detail. Oh, not gonna find it. It's in the other room. You have to use my watch to turn it on. Like, Start ringing. Where are you at? Oh, found it. Here it is. Okay. In the meantime, entertain yourselves, my friend, as I switch sources. Okay, here we are. There we go. Wait, okay, that did not look good on the Hisense for a split second there. So this looks fine, but just before that, oh yeah, just right there actually. Oop, missed it. Oh, that, I cannot believe I missed that. Okay, let's try this again. There we go, caught it. Hisense, we caught where you are weak, right here. This is a very difficult shadow detail scene. On the TCL, nails it. The Hisense, I don't know what's wrong here. Let me turn up the exposure so you can see this even better. Okay. I see what Hisense attempted to do. Black bars. It's focused so much on giving me deeper black bars, which it's almost like the BVM, right? But the black bars below her face ended up merging with the rest of the scene, so it blackened everything. Now, can we fix this? So let's look at these settings we have real quick. Oh, let me turn this down so you can see what I'm doing. Okay, so, oh, that's right. Black levels at -3. Do I need to take that up? Might have to. That helped a little. You see how at -3, it made everything too dark? So taking it, well, you can't see anything. So let me take this back down. Okay, so I'm at -3, right? Taking it back to default 0 definitely is better. But then it lists the black in the brighter scenes, so you cannot have everything. So that adjustment in shadow detail kind of screws it up. So I'm at black level 0 now. It's still not perfect. And when I say perfect, it's still not as, I mean, it's better, definitely better. The reference monitor, it's a deeper black. So to the question, the original question earlier, which has deeper blacks? For sure, neither TV is black enough. Let me see. Oh, actually, the U7 has slightly deeper blacks. It has slightly deeper blacks. So the U7, as with the Starfield, in this scene, it does have slightly deeper blacks. Let's continue this scene real quick. And this is a great one. Okay. Let me turn down exposure because the skin tones are really good in this one. So my camera, because of the hyper exposure, the color's totally off. So just look at the luminance differences. The colors of the TVs look very similar to the reference monitor. The U7 looks slightly more like the reference monitor, even though on YouTube it doesn't look like it, because once you overexpose on a camera, it kind of throws everything off in terms of color. That's one of the issues with low luminance sensors on a camera. It just can't get it as well as the higher luminance, even though it has the reference monitor correct. Okay, so that looks pretty good. And by the way, these LCD TVs could not do this in the past. You couldn't even get this good. All right, here we go. This is a good one. Yeah, so good shadow detail on both TVs. And so with the, so you saw me make the adjustment from -3 on the Hisense. The -3 gives it the deeper black levels in bright scenes. But in shadow detail, it crushes it. So I have to take it back to 0. So let's see what happens on YouTube. Yes, how that affects your contrast, because it makes it look like the contrast is slightly worse. But let's hit some of your questions before we move on. And No Logic, thank you for the super chat, but I didn't see your question, so keep on asking and we'll find it. How do you raise shadow detail on the U7? So you saw it. There is a setting called Black Level. So right here, so you can play with Black Level or Dark Detail, right? Turn on and it lightens it up. So it's a quick jump, but it's not a lot. So you see that difference? Let me turn down the exposure a touch so you guys can see that. I want you to be able to see the setting. Okay. Okay, so that setting is called Dark Detail, right? It's off. So let's turn it on. Ah, can't see anything. It's terrible. On. Off. Okay, so I'm going to turn exposure so you can see the difference now. Oh, geez. All right, here we go. Off, on, off, on. And so we're going to turn it off. That's dark detail. Now, if we go to black level, it's set to 0. If I take it down, right, it's a lot darker. Take it back to default at 0. Or you can lift it like that, right? So black level and dark detail, those two things will change your black levels. So I'm going to keep it at 0 because for shadow detail, it looks good. And I believe that the U7 slightly more accurate color at this brightness to the reference more so than the QM7 feels a little bit cool. Now I know we set it a little bit cooler, so oops, sorry about that. So remember the warm 2, 3, 4, 5, 4. Maybe 4 is a little bit better. A little bit. But then as you'll see, it's too warm in the bright scenes. So once again, TCL needs to more linearly correct its color at different luminance levels. So for this scene, you almost want it at 5, right? So at 5, it actually looks closer to the reference monitor. But even then, I feel that the U7 is more uniformly closer to the reference monitor than, and I don't have to change much other than the shadow detail. I still have to change something, right? But then let's go back. Why do people buy the big 3? Panasonic, or big 4? Panasonic, Sony, Samsung, LG. Panasonic and Sony at the top of the game, or at the top of the game when it comes to this stuff. Whatever the setting is in filmmaker mode, out of the box, you set it and you forget it. Bright, dim, it gets better, or it stays good. LG is the exception this year. The G5 was a mess near black levels, near shadow detail black, near black shadow detail. It was crushing it. Now it doesn't crush it, but you lose color. So the G5 still needs work. Before, I don't know. So the LG is still struggling with near black. But above that, it's fine. Sony nails it. Panasonic looks very good, so they are a contender for the shootout. Samsung, surprisingly, has really addressed this issue very well the last few years. So when I say big three, it actually is Samsung, Panasonic, and Sony, where you don't have these issues. LG OLED is still struggling near black with color saturation, and the G5 specifically. I don't think this, I mean, ironically, the WOLED had this problem, and they kind of addressed it, non-primary RGB WOLED, because then they're all WOLED. Like the B4 I was testing a couple of weeks back, it didn't have this issue, but then it had different issues near black, right? It was crushing a few things. So no TV is perfect, but when it comes to this skin tone at different luminance levels, I put Sony on top, Panasonic right there, and Samsung is right there. LG still struggling with skin tones near black. Okay. And hey, Dennis, thank you for that super chat. I will look for your question as well. But I didn't see your question. But Jimmy has perfect G5, and it could be a panel lottery. My G5 isn't. And it's this scene. Actually, let me show you the scene. So, Jimmy, if you are watching Game of Thrones, tell me how this scene is for you, because this is where it's most obvious that the G5 struggled. Now, these TVs don't struggle in this scene, but the G5 definitely did. So, not that one. Oh, wait, actually, I'll pause right here. So you can see there is that red saturation problem with the QM7. It was a lot worse before. This is actually a lot better. But part of it is why I'm at 2.6 gamma, and this is the issue, right? You take it up, look at that. Suddenly the red at 2.2 is fine. Now it's too bright, but it's much better, right? So now it's back at 2.2. So it's not oversaturated. It's a bit more saturated than necessary, but definitely better than at 2.6. Whereas I didn't touch the gamma on the U7QG. It's not, I mean, it's a touch oversaturated, but not as bad as the QM7K. All right, let's move on to Game of Thrones. And this is the scene that my G5 just could not do properly. Stop right there. Okay, so there's blue, right? So you can see the blue here. There's a little bit of blue here, and it's blue there. Maybe there's too much blue on the QM7. The G5 has no blue at all. It's completely monochromatic. So I don't know. It's kind of interesting. Yeah, the QM7 now has too much blue there. I don't know what the deal is. Maybe if I take it back to 2.6, it'll be better. Still too blue. But oh well, can't be perfect. But it definitely fixed, their shadow detail was fixed. They're no longer crushing the black levels. So LG is working hard for the shootout, but it will be fully calibrated by our crack team of calibrators led by Dwayne Davis. So he's going to make sure that all the TVs are calibrated. I mean, he's spending days calibrating this thing. He's taking this very seriously. Pause right here. Okay. See how these TVs do is turn up the exposure. And remember, the TCL was at 2.2. That's why it's a little bit brighter. Nope, it's at 2.6. Okay. Well, there you have it. I think the U7QG, good. Q7, let's try that again. You can see on her hair, there's a bit too much red on the QM7. All right. very close. Possible exception is to the left of the horse. The U7QG maybe, it looks like it's crushing it a touch, just a touch, right? Whereas the QM7 looks like it's lifting it a touch, and the reference monitor is like in between. So, oh, like we said, the U7QG, it prioritizes black levels, but you're losing some of that detail. Now, obviously, I had to hyperexpose for you guys to see this. We're really pushing these TVs to their breaking point. Both TVs, I would say, passes the test because they both err on different sides of wrong, right? So I don't know. What do you guys think? Oh, I love it. The U7QG looks amazing. Yeah, I think it's still ahead of the QM7K, and I did choose it. Now we're going to do some bright sports in a second, and the QM7K isn't as dim as I had originally thought, but once the settings were done, vivid mode, everything, and you guys will see, it actually looks really good. And Jared asks, thank you for the super chat, Jared. It seems for dark, light-controlled room, the U7 is better. Yes, or even any room condition, because they're both bright enough. So bright room, dark room, U7 is going to work very well. Now the QM7, because it is over brightening here and there, in a bright room it doesn't matter. Your ambient light is going to screw with your eyes anyway. So the QM7 is fine for bright rooms, but yes, in a dark room where you're more sensitive to critical viewing, I would choose the U7QG, which is why I kind of chose it to take the lead as my value leader above the QM6K. The QM6K is about 550 right now. U7QG is 800. I think 550 for a 65-inch of that caliber is excellent. But if you were to upgrade, I would go to the U7QG as the $250 upgrade to get the full HDR impact, because I think it nails it right there. Okay. And Jimmy agrees. Hisense at work, I did find I could get more of a 3D depth under a lot of testing in dark scenes. Yeah, no, the Hisense, I wish they applied it to the U8, right? It's like, wait a minute, you did so well with the U7QG. You didn't have enough resources to go with the U8? Like, what happened? So yeah, it's unfortunate. But you know what? You guys win because you don't have to pay extra for this level of performance. I love it. Let me see. Oh, since I'm on Kaleidoscape, let's do some alpha. Just, you know, HDR Impact, right? The good stuff. Stuff you guys really like. Okay. Shadow detail, HDR highlights. I think that's the one. See what we got. There we go. Okay, you know what? I'm gonna have to look at that shadow detail one more time. So the reference monitor was on SDR. I apologize, guys. Let's redo the shadow detail. I'm gonna give the QM7K one more chance because the reference, we don't know what really was referenced at that point. I know it wasn't that red, but it also wasn't that desaturated. So let's do this again. Like, wait a minute. Why does it look so different? What do I have to turn on HDR on the reference monitor? You would think for this amount of money, it would auto detect, but it did not. Okay, so let's turn up the exposure. So Once again, QM7K slightly over brightened, the U7QG slightly darker. And these are very difficult scenes. You guys rarely see this, but you see more of this in the super bright scenes. There we go. Okay, so that's that. And the TCL QM7K, the eyes, the reflection off the iris, it pops like the Sony BVM. So I would have to say, skin tone goes to the U7, but HDR Impact, those little highlights go to the QM7. They did a good job with that one right there. There we go. Yeah, U7 definitely nails it on the color accuracy consistently from low to high. So if you want HDR Impact, that slight pop, QM7 is doing that very well. Let's go back to Game of Thrones. So that's why it looked desaturated. Wow, why does that look like it's not as blue as it should be? So in that scene, there's a lot of blue there. The QM7 has that blue. And in this case, now that the reference monitor is right, the U7 doesn't have enough blue. Oh, geez. Don't you love this job? Okay, now we move on to the other money shot Game of Thrones scene. Still too much red on the QM7. That hasn't changed. But we know if you raise it to 2.2, some of that red goes away, right? Oh, missed it. And wait, let me just see. I'm double checking the gamma one more time. Yeah, see at 2.6, even at 2.2, it's better, definitely better. But, well, 2.2 is actually very close to the reference monitor now. But at 2.6, it does push a little bit too red. Okay, here we go. All right. Okay, so just a bit too crushed on the U7QG on the left. And it does have that shadow detail black level issue on the U7QG. It does want to err on the side of blackness. Now you can lift it. Obviously you guys know how to lift the blacks, right? Either black detail, hit on, just for a quick bump, or go to black level of shadow detail and add it to +1 or something like that, right? So, but here, the QM7K, so when it comes to luminance level shadow detail, I think the QM7K does a great job. But color at that level, it's challenging on the QM7K. Color on the U7 is more consistent. So you got to choose your poison, right? If you don't care too much about the color, go for the QM7K. But they both have their strengths for sure. All right, now we can do HDR Impact with real movie content. Oh, geez. Okay, let's see. This is that infamous pan scene. So when you see the sun, the question is how well does it tone map a super bright scene, right? And so this is the classic, this is one of the original HDR movie scenes that was supposed to be really bright. And I'll turn on the waveform so you guys can see how bright it really is. In a second, let me pause right now. There we go. Oh, yes. Okay, so let me turn down the exposure a bit more. So on the reference monitor, it's a bit sharper. The detail of that sun next to the ship, deeper blacks. Only an OLED could come close to that. I don't expect these TVs to come as close, but let me look at how bright that really is here. So that's barely 2000 nits. So on the brightest part of the scene, this sun here, not even 2000 nits. Close to it, but not quite. So there you have it. Now, would dynamic tone mapping help the U7 here? Because I know we have detail dynamic tone mapping already on the QM7. Oh, it's already on here as well. Okay, so let's see if turning it off helps. It does. So turning it off gives you more detail, but doesn't pop as much. It's not as bright, but it brings some of that detail back. So I will keep it, I don't know, should I keep it on or off? On gives you the impact. I think this is meant to be impactful, to hit the 2000 nits. But you have your choice, right? If you want to see that detail, and this detail is what, 2 seconds, and then it moves on to the next scene, like that. It's like whoop, boop, you're gone. So maybe you want that impact. All right, Greatest Showman. Oh yeah, the infamous hat. Let's see how well they render the hat without blowing out the faces. Here we are. Here we go. I love this scene. And it does feel like now the U7 doesn't have enough red. It's a little bit desaturated, isn't it? Interesting, right? Can't win them all. So in this one, the reference is showing that there's a bit of richness here that the U7QG is missing because maybe at low luminance, it's taking away some color. Now, look at the stars in the hat. That QM7K really sparkles, right? So, you know, you got some wins here for the QM7K. Excellent scene here to demonstrate the prowess of the QM7K. Good job there. I love it. Look at that. Good sparkling. Oh, look at that sparkle. Excellent on the QM7K. Skin tones, spot on. And then for some reason, the U7QG looks a bit green here. Didn't see that before. Like, did I do something wrong? Did I change the color? Like, what did I do? This is the, now I'm kind of like, I'm like, wait, what's wrong? Okay, brightness, I'm looking at all the settings. Dynamic, yeah, did it off? Does it make a difference? Nope. Let's look at the color. Yeah, warm 1 is correct. Did I turn that on by accident? No, nope. Yep. Color's 50. I mean, you could add color to this, making it 65, but what happens then, right? So at 65, the color looks a little bit better, doesn't it? But it's still a little bit green. Yeah, you know, if you really want to get this done right, you got to have both TVs calibrated, because up to this point, the U7 was doing really well. I mean, at color 65, it does help a bit, but then what's going to happen later at different color tones? We'll just leave it at 65 for now. But just because in this scene, it alleviates some of that lack of color. Okay, moving on. Alpha, here we go. Bright scene. Not this one. Yeah, this one. This is a difficult scene, no doubt. And both TVs seem to do this really well. Let me tell you how bright this scene is. Ooh, about 3,000 nits, over 2,000 nits. That sun right there is over 2,000 nits. So this is brighter than that pan scene. They both look really good. Yeah, excellent, excellent. And let me turn up the exposure so you can see the shadow detail. Is there any loss of shadow detail by getting that bright? Because you have some shadows in this scene as well. And the answer is no. Look at that. This is excellent, by the way. Arguably, there is a little bit more contrast in the clouds on the reference monitor. Right, this is where the OLEDs would do a little bit better. So right here in the clouds, it's just a touch darker in the darkest area on the reference monitor. And OLEDs will do that perfectly. But this is very close by both TVs. Again, not quite OLED-like, but a lot closer than it's ever been in the past. I'll tell you that. Yeah. Looks really good. Looks really good. Okay, see there's another bright scene happening here. Oh yeah, this is really bright. So this part, this sun is like, it's a touch brighter, but wow, these TVs are doing a great job. And now in this scene, the U7 is a bit too yellow. So it was a bit better before. So see, both these TVs, I have to make adjustments depending on the scene, which I shouldn't have to do. So I'll go back to 50. Yeah, 50 is the correct color. It's just desaturated. So one is oversaturated in shadow, and the QM7K is oversaturated in shadow, and the U7QG is desaturated, right? It's like this range. You have to choose your poison as you get brighter or darker. So yeah, you gotta leave it at 50, because most scenes you guys will be the slightly brighter scenes, but that's just what it is. Sorry. Okay, let's move on. What? Game of Thrones? I think we're done. Okay. All right, let's move on to sports content. And then we'll answer your questions as well. Sorry, I'm just kind of going through all this before I forget. Okay, and then we'll do some over-the-air satellite content. And if you're enjoying this, don't forget to click like, my friends. Actually, you know what? This is a great place for me to, ooh, that's not good. That reminds me to turn it back to SDR. Actually, for sports content, I'll have to turn it off because I assume you guys want to see what vivid mode looks like, right? No, you know what? Let's look at free TV real quick so you guys can see what that looks like. So let me move it to this. Okay. So in SDR, free TV, in this case it's Google Play. And let me turn up exposure. Oh, well, I can't pause. Okay, look how great they look. It looks very similar to each other, right? They did a good job here. So in filmmaker mode, it's fine. Yeah, I mean, look at that. Excellent. So filmmaker mode, great, great, great. I think we can move on from there. Look at the skin tones of this gentleman here. Oh, no complaints. Wow, these TVs nailed it. Oh, actually, you know what? Let me show you guys my SDR settings, which is slightly, it's definitely not out of the box for sure. So we'll start with the TCL SDR. So for reference, because my reference TV is a fixed brightness, brightness is set to 10, right? Clearly, this is not bright enough for a bright room. You're going to want to go to 100, arguably. But to make sure we match the reference monitor's brightness, it is set to 10. But again, in a dark room like this is fine. In a bright room, you probably want to go brighter. So 2.6, again, because we're in a dark room, you might want to go brighter. To 2.2 in a brighter room. And local contrast high, peak luminance is off. Okay. So free TV, that's what you're getting. Yep. Local dimming high, peak brightness is off. But again, gamma's 2.4. You might want to go change those in a bright room. That's the problem. Okay, so let's go to sports now. Let me take off this waveform. So we're going to go to Vivid. Ah, yes. College Football Live. Okay, how do they look? Unfortunately, it would be way brighter than what my monitor is capable of. But why don't we look at her face real quick so you can see what her skin tone is like right now. Okay, so this is her skin tone. Okay, filmmaker mode. That's the skin tone. Now, we're going to go to, in a bright room, you want to see the capability of these TVs in terms of their max brightness. We will see if I can match her skin tone. Sports, standard, vivid, standard. Same, it feels like the brightness doesn't really change. So we'll keep it at standard because I like her skin tone in standard. It looks very similar. Yep, gamma's 2.2, dynamic contrast low. Peak luminance is standard. You can go brighter. So let's go to high dynamic peak luminance because the goal is to go as bright as possible. Dynamic brightness is eco. I'm going to turn that off. Don't know what it does, but it cannot be good. Okay, so I think some of her skin tone is preserved there. And that's standard on TCL. Let me adjust the brightness again. Okay, I think we're there. All right. Hisense, same thing. Let's go to Vivid. Let's try Theater Day. Energy saving. Why is energy saving so bright? PC game mode. Sports. Actually, sports isn't bad. That's standard. Yeah, Vivid's a bit too rich. Standard, pretty good. Okay, so here we are. And I think the two TVs, their brightness is pretty well matched. Look at the rest of the settings. Let's see, local dimming is on medium. So high makes it a touch brighter. So I'll keep local dimming on high. Peak brightness, medium, let's go to high. So it's similar to the TCL, brightness 100, contrast 50, dark detail is off. Gamma also 2.2, AI contrast is medium. Yeah, medium looks better. All right. And it feels like the TCL is a touch warmer. I just want to match at least their skin tones a bit. So I'm taking color temperature to -2 just to match them. This is not reference or anything, so it doesn't bother you guys. Okay. And of course, the reference monitor at reference broadcast is way too dim. So it's safe to say that the QM7K and the U7QG is as bright as it needs to be. When we did this comparison with the U8 and the Bravia 9, they're very similar in brightness. So I think we're okay here in brightness. Let me see if there's a football field somewhere. Oh, there we go. There's a football. Nick Saban returns to college football. Say it ain't so. Let me see something with a field. Like a bright, oh, close enough. Ice skating. Or a truck commercial. Where's my ice skating rink? Clearly. Okay. Well, let's look at their facial skin tones real quick. And compared to the reference monitor, this isn't bad. It really isn't bad. Actually, okay, these TVs have definitely improved their skin tones in bright scenes. Very good, very good. No complaints. More than adequate. Okay, let's see what questions you guys got. And hey, buddy, thank you for the super chat. Which one is worth FOMO dollars and how is their audio? So both of them are the same price, $7.99. And how's their audio? I will actually test audio right now for you guys and we'll listen. I actually have an audio test set up. I did not set up my mic because I didn't expect to do audio, but since you asked so nicely, buddy, we'll do it right now. Mama Love needs a new TV that she doesn't watch all the time, but need it to be good for when I come visit. QM7K has the HDR Impact and the specular highlights a touch better than U7QG. U7QG has more consistent skin tones throughout the range, but as it gets darker and darker, it becomes undersaturated. QM7K, as it gets darker and darker, becomes oversaturated. But the U7QG skin tones are more consistently accurate. So if you're focused on skin tones a bit, like you want a Sony feel, more often than not, go for the U7QG. If you want HDR Impact or skin tones is unpredictable, sometimes it's right, sometimes it's wrong, go with the QM7K. So I hope that's the perfect answer for you. But we did answer your audio. So let's look at that right now. And you guys can listen to it with me. Okay, let's see. This is my... Oh, I see. Okay, here we go. Here's my audio test down here. Ah, I've been waiting for this. I did this with a U7. Okay, let me pause right there. So we're going to hear a cinematic score, females, vocals, and pop. Now, you're going to listen to my laugh, so I'm going to have to give you my impression. So let me see I'm going to try to increase the loudness. We'll start with the TCL. I'm going to match their loudness, which is impossible to do, by the way, by ear. But I will try, because normally you're going to have a loudness meter to get it right, but it would take me forever to do this. So I will do it what I can right here. Let me see. So I'm at 50. Let's see what it sounds like. And I'm like 10 feet away. Okay. Where is the mute button on this thing? Does TCL not have a mute button? It does not have a mute button. Oh, how am I going to go back and forth without a mute button? You know, oh, there it is. I found it. Okay. I'm like, this is terrible. Okay. Wow. So I could get a little bit louder there. Okay. Wow. Okay, so the Hisense has slightly lower bass. I'm going to check the sound setting to make sure I'm not putting on dialogue. The Hisense is slightly louder, but it sounds slightly louder because the bass is fuller. I don't know necessarily if the vocals are slightly louder, so we're going to have dedicated vocals shortly. But let me see what the sound settings are real quick. I want to make sure I put on cinema because I think that's the way to go. And it does have sound mode. So let's put a movie. Let's put Biosonic. Available only when sound mode is set to custom. Right. Let's go custom. Come on, let's take advantage of this Bang & Olufsen magic. Energetic, huh? Okay. All right. Let's do energetic. Okay. So let's do this again. But let me make sure the audio setting on the Hisense is also set to, so it's on TV sound effect, standard, theater, all right? Auto sound processing, Atmos virtualization auto, advanced settings. I'm going to leave on default. Okay. All right. So both are in their version of movie mode or theater mode. Let's try this again. We'll start with, and the TCL is on max volume, by the way. So between 85 and 100, it sounds very similar. I didn't hear any distortion, so I think it's capping itself on purpose, which is good. All right, let's do this. So I'm going to stand right above my camera. So if you guys hear anything, it's relative to what I hear. But again, it's a lav mic, and it's not full frequency lav mic. So we're listening to the TCL. All right, let's listen to the Hisense now. I'll tell you. Let me take it up. Yep, it's also at 100. Okay, I've heard enough. Hisense wins hands down on cinematic score. Oh my God. It's louder and it has a wider range. There's no doubt about it. Okay, let's hear pop female vocals.
It's gonna be alright. How can you tell? Yeah, yeah. I feel it in my heart. Yeah, yeah. It's gonna be okay. Yeah, yeah. The sun is shining bright.
Okay, I think we heard enough of that. Let's try the Hisense.
It's gonna be alright. How can you tell? Yeah, yeah. I feel it in my heart.
Heard enough. Hisense wins hands down. I'm getting more volume, clarity, and maybe it's Biosonic. You know what, TCL? Let's see. Let's see if I turn off Biosonic and put it in movie or music. Let's give it a shot to win music, because I think there's a lot of bass. Even though it's her vocals, there's bass in the background. So we'll give it music and see what happens. I'm gonna give it a shot. I already know what to expect from Hisense. They killed it.
Be alright.
Whoops, wrong one. All right, let's try that again. TCL.
It's gonna be alright. How can you tell?
Okay, so the vocals, dialogue is fine. The problem is there's no bass. So in the same size TV, 65-inch, 65-inch, if you need only dialogue, both TVs are very similar. If you want more below 200 hertz, Hisense. Wow. Let me see how large the woofers are behind the Hisense, because it is so complete. Yeah, it has, you can't really tell, but it feels like there's a slightly larger woofer back here on the Hisense. A single larger mid woofer, or like a 5-inch woofer, rather than two 4-inch woofers that's on the TCL. But either way, the headroom is higher on the Hisense. The overall volume is definitely louder on the Hisense, and then the entire frequency range goes deeper on the Hisense. So get mama the Hisense TV, because then if you watch a movie or whatever and she doesn't have a sound bar, Hisense more satisfying. The QM7K, you would definitely need a, not a sound bar, but a sound bar with a subwoofer. Adding the sound bar still doesn't give you enough of that oomph. So, hey, thank you for that, buddy. Now we know the answer. Hisense for the audio win. And by the way, this is really good audio I'm hearing from the Hisense. Most TVs sound like the QM7K. This Hisense really upped its game in terms of the mid-woofer punch. I love it. All right. Let's see. What do I have left to do? I think we've done everything, right? Oh, over the air. Yes, let's try that real quick. So I plugged it into my antenna. Hisense definitely has next-gen TV. I don't know if TCL does, but it doesn't make a difference. So let's go to the home page on one, home on the other. Let me turn off the reference. Okay, let's see. No, that's not right. There it is.
Which are protective custody.
Baywatch? How did that happen? Okay. live. I'm looking for my TV channel. How do I get to the TV channel? All right, here we go. Ah, there it is. TV. Okay. There we go. TV, antenna. Okay. So clearly they're all on different, oops. Ah. Okay. Filmmaker mode. Standard. We're watching soap operas right now. Oops. Standard as well. Okay. They look the same to me in terms of processing, upscaling, although there's a little bit of lag on one TV. Antenna processing probably. They both look great. I don't know. It's hard to do because they're off by like 10 seconds or something. So I don't want to play this too long. I'm going to get hit by somebody. All right. Okay. So over the air looks fine, but honestly, I'm going to have to sync them. But I don't think it's worth it because most of you guys are not doing over the air broadcasts, but it looks fine. The processing, nothing that shouts, oh, it needs help. Okay. What questions do you guys have for me about the QM7K or the U7QG? We're going to do a wrap up in a few minutes, but I want to make sure I answer your questions. The closer, great show. And Hisense has a dialogue enhancement setting in audio too, likely due to the MediaTek 800 chipset. She's not soundbar savvy. Hisense it is. Yes, the Hisense is the U7 is impressing me greatly. Okay. Hisense audio is way better this year. It is very good this year. I mean, I appreciate that TCL went out and collaborated with Bang & Olufsen, but after hearing Hisense, I want TCL to go and ask for their money back because I was not as impressed. Okay, if Bang & Olufsen, all they did was give software and tuning, but they had no control over the hardware, it is what it is, right? Look, here's some crappy speakers, do what you can with your B&O magic. They're like, But if Bang & Olufsen helped them design the hardware, this is a fail relative to what Hisense delivered that did not have Bang & Olufsen, and it was just their in-house whatever. Now, on the 116UX, they partnered with Diavalet, right? Devialet. I forgot how to pronounce it. It's a French company, either Diavalet or Devialet, but they partnered with them, and it sounded incredible. But that's on the 116UX. At these lower level TVs, in-house baby, and the Hisense in-house is phenomenal. You guys heard it. So bravo Hisense, take it in-house. And TCL end that partnership with B&O because it did not help you at all beat Hisense in audio. That's just amazing what you guys did. Okay, let's see what we got. What else we got? What else we got? Yes, I am doing my homework. Oh, the shootout next weekend. Okay, so it's not this weekend. Thank you for the reminder, Mozart. Not this weekend. It is next weekend, July 26th. I'll be live streaming. This is why I'm live streaming all week. I'm getting warmed up. I'm making sure I have full control over my audio and everything right. Brian's going to be there. He's busy shooting content because we're going to be out, or I'll be out on the East Coast for 3-4 days. I cannot create any other content other than what you guys will see, which is the live stream. But I want to make sure I'm on the ball. So we'll have 6 TVs there. Now, I will be covering the top 4 TVs. The Samsung S90F, the LG G5, the Panasonic Z95B, and the Sony Bravia 8II. So those 4 TVs, 55 inches, all stacked up in front of me. We won't have a reference monitor, but they will all be calibrated, I think, to, not to the same degree as the 65 inches in the other room, but the other room not only has those TVs, it will have the Samsung S90F and the LG G5 as the mid-tier OLED winner. So in our room, we're going to compare them just subjectively, which one looks great. So you'll see brightness differences, this and that, and they're all calibrated. So really at the end, we're going to try to predict who the winner is based on what we see, but it's going to be a little bit unpredictable because the judges have different directions. They will be directed to which TV looks most like the reference monitor. Whereas us, we're not going to be pausing and playing. Brian and I will look through all the different content, Jennifer Gala, and we'll be like, hey, Brian, which one you like better? Oh, man, this looks amazing on the Sony or the Panasonic or the G5. So we're going to have so much fun predicting because that's part of the fun. At the end of the 8 hours, Dwayne and his team, they're going to come in and say, okay, we have the victory. The victory lap is, and then we'll find out what the winner is. But up to that point, based on what we see on our 4 amazing TVs, we're going to make our predictions. And I think that's part of the fun, right? So that's next weekend. And in the meantime, I know many of you are asking, wait, FOMO, what is the cables that I use? This video's live stream is sponsored by Ruipro HDMI optical cables. I use them all the time. All my TVs are connected by Ruipro optical HDMI cables, and when I'm off-site, like at the Shootout, I bring that along and I connect it to everything. And the reason I use optical is I always run longer than 10 feet because everything is so far apart, right? So shorter than 10 feet, copper is fine. Works great, I love it. 10 feet or longer, it gets too thick and it overheats your HDMI bus. So if you're asking which optical cables I use, I've been using Ruipro since I started this channel. And now they're a sponsor. So there you have it. That's what I use, and I'll put it in the link below for you guys. Okay, wrapping it up. What is the TV to get? Depends on your use case and your priority, right? HDR Impact, the subtle little highlights. It is slightly better on the QM7K, but then the skin tones are a little bit all over the place. Out of the box skin tones, you can tune it closer to reference on the U7QG, and its black levels can get a little bit deeper on the U7QG, but it also suffers a similar issue as the QM7K in that as it gets closer to dark, it starts to desaturate skin tones a little bit, whereas the QM7K oversaturates it. But more often than not, the U7Q gets the skin tones correct to reference once you play with some of the settings, which I shared with you at the beginning of the stream. So overall, if you are a Sony fan, but you don't want or you can't afford the Bravia 9 or the Bravia 7, get the U7QG. It gets closer to the Sony look than any other TV out there. But if you want HDR Impact, then the QM7K really does deliver. Both are excellent TVs at $799. I would have a hard time choosing between them. Now, if it's for bright room watching and you're only watching Cheers, Seinfeld, whatever is on YouTube, the latest on Netflix, either TV will work. They both work excellent. You saw some of the comparisons on Netflix. It's pretty consistent, right? Now, SDR, I find the U7QG to be more accurate in SDR. So if skin tones are your thing, I'd pick the U7QG. If SDR is what you watch most of the time. If HDR and HDR Impact is important, go with the QM7K. And whether you should get the U8Q or the QM8K, I think the U8Q, because it's a little bit cheaper, you might consider it, but I would still choose the U7QG. The money you save, buy yourself a soundbar and a subwoofer combo, and you still get a better experience than paying a little more for the U8QG. Now, the QM8K is better than the U8QG. However, it's twice as much as the QM7K. I don't think it's worth twice as much. It is definitely not worth $1,600, which is what it's priced right now. The QM8K at $1,100, I can see the argument, right? $800, paying a few $100s more for QM8K, it gets a little bit louder in the audio, but then your U7QG gets louder in the audio. So I think the QM8K is better, but not better enough. It's maybe $150 better, maybe $200 better, yes. Just like the QM7K is $200 better than the QM6K, the QM8K is barely $200 better, barely $200 better than the QM7K, but the QM7K is definitely $200 better than the QM6K because of that HDR Impact. But again, if all you watch is SDR, old TV shows, the QM6K is a phenomenal deal, just like the U6 would be. So that's the conclusion. If you disagree, let me know in the comments below, and let me see if I can catch any last minute questions I may have missed. And if not, we will see you again shortly. Yes, Mozart, I too would go with a Hisense on this budget. $800, I would. So it is still my choice for best value under $800 if you include HDR. SDR only, QM6K is the best value. Add HDR, I would go with the U7QG with everything taken together. The QM7K does stand on its own, slightly better HDR impact. And with that, oh, so Patrick, what do you mean by HDR impact? You mean Netflix or Blu-ray? I mean specific scenes. So if you go back to the live stream, I did a scene with, what was that movie with a hat? Greatest Showman. So Greatest Showman, she's wearing the sparkly hat. On the QM7K, the hat sparkled just a touch more. Or in the Dune, right, the movie Dune, her eyes, the reflection off of her irises shined a little bit brighter. That's what I mean by HDR specular highlight impact, right? The little things sparkled a touch more. But is that important to you? One. And number two, I had to have the reference monitor and the Hisense next to it. I could go, oh, Hisense is bright, but QM7K popped a little bit more. So it's not Netflix or Blu-ray, Patrick, it is the actual scene itself. So you have to really choose these scenes and go, oh yeah, I see it. And I think the U7QG, the value hits more people with the SDR skin tones and all of that. Whereas the QM7K is kind of like a specialist. That's like a sniper, right? Oh, in this scene, it'll kill it. In this scene, it'll kill it. But in this scene, it loses out. So that's what I mean by HDR impact, those specular highlights, right? Okay. And what about the Bravia 4 OLED TV at the same price? In a dark room, I would take the Bravia 4 because all the TVs in a dark room, you don't need to get super bright. The Bravia 4 is actually excellent. The problem is in a bright room, when you need to hit vivid mode, the Bravia 4 will not keep up at all. So in a bright room where infinite contrast is less noticeable because you got so much ambient light, go with one of these TVs. But yeah, so it depends on your viewing environment. If you're watching mostly dark scenes, Seinfeld, I keep on using Seinfeld, Bosom Buddies, Brady Bunch, all three TVs will look the same in a dark room, but the B4 will have slightly better contrast, and that might make a difference for you. But I'm normally in a moderately lit room, I would go with a mini LED. Now, the B4 at 77 inches or 83 inches, now you're getting a bit size and it makes up for some of that loss in brightness. But for 65 inches in a brighter room, it's one of those things where a lot of people are saying, oh, always go with OLED. Well, if it's a G4, a G3, G5, absolutely. But that costs almost 3 times more than either of these TVs. But for the same price, I think we're good with mini LED at $800. I mean, at $1,200, $1,400, yeah, you got the S90F, Black Friday, S90D. But at $800, I think the mini LED is a really killer deal. Either of these mini LED TVs. Okay, I think we're good to go. Thank you so much, everyone, for showing up. And I'm just going to leave Jimmy's comment because it makes me feel so good. FOMO, you rule, respect. And I respect all of you for hanging out with me today. Okay, so I'll think of another live stream to do before next week. I'll figure something out. Until next time, my friends, enjoy your week and stop the FOMO.